Hi everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and today on the show we're actually going to be talking about, and you can sort of tell that I'm a little distracted. Today on the show we're going to be talking about OBS Studio Plugins, and I have been advertising 4 plugins that we're going to be talking about today. In actual fact, the number is 5, so you get a bonus one, so hang around for that. It would be great to hear from you in terms of where you're watching from. So I'm forever trying to make this thing happen. But let us know in the chat if you're watching live with hashtag team live, or if you're watching later on, you can do hashtag team replay. A big hello to people that are watching from the chat. Saeed from Germany, the facilitator, is joining us over there. He's Team Cat, of course he is. And hello to Stefan, who's joining us from Sweden as well. Great to have your company today. So if you've seen this show before, you will know normally I have a co-host, and he's actually not here today, but he did send a little message, so I'm going to play that for you right now.
Hi John, hi creators, how's everyone doing? Sorry I couldn't be there this week. We have been displaced from our house as some repair work has started. We are staying in a hotel, and unfortunately there's just no good place to do any kind of live stream, but the internet connection here is just way under the bandwidth required. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to join in to watch the stream. So I hope everyone's doing good. And unfortunately, we just found out that this might be happening for another week. So I might have to miss next week as well. And that sucks. Sorry. I hope you're all doing good. Holler at me on Twitch or YouTube or Twitter at SamProof. And have a great show, John. I hope things are better with you.
Thanks, Sam. And yes, it does sound kind of frustrating, but we appreciate the gesture of reaching out with that message. That's cool. It's really funny though, because he sent that to me and I was getting ready to upload this to StreamYard like right before the show was set to start, and I discovered that because he recorded it on his iPhone, it came in as a QuickTime movie file, and I couldn't do that directly, so I had to go and convert that into something else. But you know, it's the joy of technology. But today we are going to be talking about probably my favorite bit of technology, which is OBS Studio. And I should say today I might be a little bit more distracted than usual because I'm doing a little bit of this in OBS, a little bit of this in StreamYard through the magic of the virtual camera. But I do want to talk about this software because it is my favorite thing in the world. I really love it. And it's funny, a lot of people talk about software because it has a really lucrative affiliate program. OBS is literally free. It's open source. I'm not telling you because I get any kind of kickback. I'm telling you because I think it's amazing. And that's just the truth of this situation. So it's open source, and I use a couple of mixed metaphors. I kind of describe it as a pocket knife in the sense that it's very useful, but it's also a bit of a rocket ship in the sense that it can do pretty much anything you can think of. And in some ways, I try not to overplay the rocket ship aspect of this for beginners because it can be a little bit overwhelming if you look at all of the features and all of the options. But the truth is you don't need a lot of this to get started and just get started efficiently. But the wonderful thing about this actually being open source is the code is available to other developers, and those developers really kindly offer their own additional code creations to extend the functionality. And we see this with scripts, we see this with plugins, and plugins are going to be the focus of today's show. And if you don't know, obsproject.com is the official website to go to get the software, and it's also a great place to actually find the plugins as well. So if we have a look at, they have their own forum over here, over at obsproject.com, where you can check out a whole bunch of plugins, themes, scripts, tools, all kinds of stuff. It's not the only place to get this information, but it is a really good starting point. So today, I'd love to hear about what plugins you guys are using, if you're using them, or maybe you're looking for a plugin, you have a particular functionality you'd like to add to your stream or your recording, or your ability to show up on webcam. That is true. So Saeed is just saying that there was a new update to OBS last week. It's one of those things that literally came out, I think, like I got the prompt 5 minutes before we were going to go live on last week's show, and I didn't update it then because it's always a bit risky to take that chance just before you're going live in case something goes wrong. So if you do have a particularly elaborate setup, it's a good idea to just sort of test it out first. So let's talk about it. This today's show is going to be a little bit different in the sense that I am by myself, and I'm also sort of we're not going to use the tab structure. It's going to be a little bit different, but I hope it's going to be useful. So let me know. And I should say too that you can do all kinds of things with plugins. And I tried to sort of simplify this a little bit during the week in the Learn Live Streaming newsletter. And I don't know if this is even doing this justice, but there are things like animation and movement. I mean, I can press a button here and you can see my little logo in the corner sort of animate ever so slightly. That's a very subtle example, but you can do a lot with that. Sound and music is another thing, and we've got 3 separate plugins to talk about in terms of sound and audio today. Recording and streaming horizontally and vertically at the same time, and some of you will already know what I'm talking about there, but we're going to talk about that one as well. You can bring the chat comments directly into your stream. You can organize your assets and your stream library. You've got additional recording options, additional monitoring options. There's all kinds of things that you can potentially be doing. And again, Sayed's already getting in with some of his favorites. I love to see it. So the Move plugin, the audio monitor, the scene tree, they're some of the favorite plugins that he can't live without. So that's really awesome. We're going to talk about some of these. Again, like I said, we're going to be covering basically 5 today. There are hundreds out there, I imagine. So we can't cover everything, but again, if there are things that you're interested in learning more about or any problems you're having, let me know in the chat. If I can't answer it today, I'll try to get back to you sometime in the future, but let's get stuck into this right now. And again, I don't think it'll be any great surprise to anybody that watches the show regularly, but we've got to talk about the Atom Vertical plugin. So the Atom Vertical plugin, and I know we've spoken about it a bit. And again, it's another thing that is literally free, that is kind of amazing, and I love it completely. So the great thing about this plugin is it actually gives you 2 separate canvases. So you have the one that's sort of built into OBS, which is traditionally horizontal, and you've got a sort of a new vertical version of that. The really interesting thing about this is that it doesn't have to be vertical. You can actually change the dimensions of this to anything you like. So it could be square, it could be rectangular, could be horizontal, vertical, whatever you like, as long as it is some sort of rectangle at the end of the day. And you can actually go in and you can set up your scene in one version and you can set up your scene in the other. And you can sort of make them do the same things at different canvas sizes, or you can switch them up completely. So it's kind of up to you. But let's just have a quick look at this video and we'll talk about it some more in just a second. One of the great things about OBS Studio being free and open source software is that there is a community of developers building plugins and scripts to extend its basic functionality. You can find many of these over at obsproject.com, but there are other places you can find them too. And today I want to talk about the Atom Vertical plugin. The Atom Vertical plugin actually allows you to have vertical and horizontal versions of your streams or recordings at the same time. And they're not just merely cropped versions of one or the other. You can literally make them have the same scenes or different scenes and sources. But to download the plugin, head over to atom.tv, click on the vertical plugin, hit this download button, and we will wait for this to download. We can run the installer, make sure that you're installing it to your OBS installation on your computer. Hit the install button, and you're pretty much ready to go. Now, when you open OBS Studio, you'll actually have a few extra docs for the vertical scenes, the vertical sources, and you should also have a vertical canvas as well. I'm not actually seeing that on my screen, so I'm going to go up to the docs menu and just make sure I select this vertical option over here. Essentially, this is my vertical canvas. So what I can do from here, and again, I might just, you can sort of decide where you want to include that one. If you want to dock it or have it external, I will just move this over here, I think. Okay, and essentially we've got the ability to record or stream in both horizontal and vertical, where you've got the option to do that. But again, let's talk about actually setting up this scene. So I've already set up on the left-hand side, you can see my horizontal scene. I want to come down to the vertical sources. I want to hit that plus sign to add a new source. and I'll come in and I will grab my video capture device. You'll see here for the vertical sources, you have two options. One is for a new source, which is literally the word new here, or you can go down to existing ones. So here I want to reuse my camera source in this setting as well. So that brings that over there already. You can see that you can see some of the background behind me. So I can hold down Alt and drag that in to crop it out. Probably do that on the other side as well. I can resize that. So obviously things in a vertical format and horizontal format, you'll probably need to consider how they work differently. If I want to come in, I can come in and add some other things here. So maybe I want to come in and actually add an image. And again, I could use the same background that I've got over here, but I would have to resize that. And in this case, I've actually got, I've got a, I'm just going to get rid of that one from my list. I'm going to come in here and add some new images that are actually sort of scaled to this 16:9 format. So I'll go to new. I will go and find my images. So I've got a background. And I might even come in here and just rename that, and I'll say background vertical. And again, if I want to move this underneath my camera, which makes total sense, I would click on that and drag it down. And then I might want to add some more images. So we'll go to image, new. I've got a little bar that I like to have at the bottom of my screen. That's great where it is. And again, I might go image, new, and I might bring in my logo as well, which I believe is that one there. Okay, so now, I can potentially come in here and maybe resize this. I might want to make myself larger in the frame. It just depends on what I'm actually doing here. So a few things to note about the ATEM vertical plugin. You've got these options down here. So we've got the ability to start streaming vertically. We can record vertically. We can do the backtrack clip vertical, which is sort of just a replay buffer. And we do also have a vertical camera. So the virtual camera is really good for getting into TikTok's streaming service, but we do also have the options over here. So if we go to the settings, we can decide how, the format that we want to save our videos to for streaming and recording, where they go, if we're using the backtrack feature, how long that backtrack is actually for, and whether it's always running or running while streaming or in recording. Okay, and what we can do is if we can set up a new scene in our horizontal version. We'll just call this one scene 2 for argument's sake. We can have literally whatever we want on here. I'm just going to put some text here just to say scene 2, just as an example, just because I really want to show you a really cool feature here. So I'm just going to call this scene 2. Again, you would probably make a much more interesting scene here. But let's throw that over there. I'm going to come over to my vertical scenes now, and I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to say vertical scene 2. This will actually move us over to our vertical scene. I'm going to add that same text. I'm going to go to a new source, and I'm going to go to scene 2. It's going to throw that there. I can sort of reposition that where I want it. Again, not the most exciting example in the world, but I just want to show you something which is really, really cool. So if I go back to my first scene, if I right click in my vertical scenes on this one, we actually have this option here called link scenes. So when one scene is selected from the horizontal version of your stream, the corresponding one will be used over on the vertical version. So in this case, this is just called, scene. I'll link the horizontal scene with the vertical scene. And let's actually come down and find scene 2, and we will do the same thing here. And scene 2. So again, now if I go back to scene 1, you'll see that it happens in both horizontal and vertical. And if I do the same with scene 2, it goes there as well. So The great thing about that is you can use all the methods to move from scene to scene in the horizontal version, such as keyboard shortcuts or a button on your Stream Deck, or just clicking, and that will sort of correspond, which is a really, really useful feature. Okay, so that was just, it's so funny watching a video of yourself and then coming back to yourself as well. I wasn't even sure when that video was going to end. But yes, there's a quick walkthrough for the ATEM vertical plugin. And I think I saw some heads exploding. So I've got to address some comments. Omarvously says, wait, so does that mean you can stream both vertically and horizontally? Yes, that's literally what it means. So you can actually... You can go live horizontally to some places and vertically to other places. Just keep in mind that because you are sending out those two different signals, you do need to be mindful of the impact that's going to have in your internet connection. If you are going out to a number of different places, it's often a good idea to use a service like Restream to send the horizontal place out once and then have it redirect and take the load of that bandwidth to other places like YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitch and wherever. But you can also record. So Saeed sort of mentioned that he hasn't found a use for this yet, and that's fine. I kind of know the spaces that he likes to play in. It probably doesn't make as much sense. But one of the case studies that I really like is the ability to go live in this horizontal format, but actually record in a vertical format. And that helps me sort of cut things up for, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok, that kind of thing really easily because they're already in a format ready to go. Big hello to CG who's joining us. Great to have your company. Just a reminder that Sam is he's staying at a hotel at the moment. His house is being repaired and he can't join us today. He would have loved to have been here, but the internet situation at the hotel is a bit iffy. But yes, you can literally do that. So, if you wanted to go to YouTube, I mean, the really interesting thing about this, and I haven't tried it yet, but you could potentially go live to YouTube horizontally and vertically at the same time, which kind of blows my mind a little bit. And I don't know how useful that would be, but I think I'm going to have to try it out at some point. Hello to Walt Strong III from the Huddle who's joining us. Great to have your company. Evan says hi to Sam as well. And just a reminder, if you want to reach out to Sam, he did send a message at the beginning of this show, just saying that he's still available on different places. So feel free to say hello, but he's a little constrained and he might not be able to be here next week either. So, all right. So I think we spoke about this one. So yeah, it won't make sense for everybody, but if it does make sense for you, it can be quite useful. And I guess the other thing too is those canvases, by default, they're horizontal and vertical. But like I said earlier, you can make them both horizontal, you can make them both vertical. And you can have different branding on one or the other or different color schemes. Like there's all kinds of possibilities if you want to get nerdy enough, I should say. Okay. All right, cool. And Omarvously is saying that he's testing Restream versus StreamYard. So I should say that we really like StreamYard, but it does some different things to Restream, and that's probably a whole other show. But especially if you are using a tool like OBS in StreamYard, you can basically go from your virtual camera into StreamYard. In Restream, you can actually go straight out of OBS to multiple destinations. So that's certainly something to consider. So again, I know that the ATEM vertical plugin isn't for everybody, but I think it's really cool. And since I first recorded that video, it's had a whole bunch of different updates. And one of those is that if you go into the vertical settings, you go to the streaming tab, you can actually set up multiple vertical destinations. So you can go in and enable or disable those as you want, and you basically hit the stream button and you potentially are live. If you are using Instagram Live Producer, you do also need to manually open that window and tell it to go live as a second step. But certainly in a lot of other places, it's just a few clicks. And that one you can find over at atem.tv, and it is literally free. So, I mean, you have very little to lose by trying it out. Okay, and hello to Roy, Tech Troublemaker, who said, I saw a game live streaming in both vertical and horizontal at the same time on YouTube. It's really interesting, and I'm part of me wants to try it, but another part of me wonders, is it worth sort of potentially splitting up my audience? Because I guess what we don't really know about vertical streaming on YouTube at the moment is I believe it shows up in the shorts experience, but I'm just not sure how many people are going to see your content in that fashion. But it is really, really interesting to check that out. So this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey. Normally I would be joined by Sam Proof. He's unable to join us this week, but hopefully he'll be back in the near future. I'm not even going to say next week because it sounds like the stuff that's happening on his property is going to take a little bit of time. But let's come back and we'll talk about another one of my favorite plugins in just a moment.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. Mm-hmm. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I talk to him, be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Sam's podcast, Just Kitten Around, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. If you are new here, Sam Proof does run this 24/7 kitten cam, where he and his wife and family, they raise foster kittens, they show them growing up, and you can get that hit of cuteness all the time. So if you are missing Sam, and obviously he's not here today, you can head over to cuteavalanche.com and learn more about that over there. This is the video and live streaming show. Today we are doing things a little bit differently. I am on my own. I'm sort of winging it, which is fun. But it's a completely different experience, but I am enjoying it so far. Tech Troublemaker Roy, just to follow up from that previous segment, is saying that it doesn't seem that that they stay in the shorts feed for long. It doesn't seem to stay there in the shorts feed though. Okay. So, I mean, that's worth knowing. So presumably, it's such a new feature, we don't even really know what's going on there. And it's kind of, you need to make a call about what's worth trying and what's not. But so much of this is just about experimenting. So, and Walter sort of chimes into, I agree, John, I believe there is a risk to having a mixed audience by live streaming vertically. And again, depending on what you're using, we spoke briefly about StreamYard versus Restream. Restream actually has a chatbot that will take comments from certain platforms and share them in other platforms. So if you're watching on Facebook and somebody said something on YouTube, you can actually see that, which can be a nice way of bridging that divide. It's always a little bit tricky in terms of actually getting people to switch to different platforms, but it doesn't sort of worth, it could be worth exploring, but again, don't lose sleep over it. Okay. All right. And I think Marvelously is sharing something, but I can't quite see that in the chat. But anyway, let's keep going. So today on the show, we're talking about OBS Studio and 4, although technically 5 plugins that are quite useful and that I certainly like using. So this one is a little bit different, and I had somebody reach out on YouTube to ask me about this specifically, and it is, and I don't even have the name of this one in front of me, but I think it's closed captioning via Google Speech Recognition. So the really cool thing about this is that you can use it in a number of different ways. Obviously, automated captions aren't going to be perfect, but this one gives you the ability to record and to basically create an SRT, which is a transcript file for your recording, for your live stream, even when you're using the virtual camera. And that way you can go in and sort of check those captions for accuracy, and then you can upload them to YouTube and wherever. But it does also give you the ability to burn those captions in real time onto the video. So that's what I was asked about. So let me just show you this one. Okay, somebody asked about bringing captions into OBS Studio. There are a number of different ways that you can do this, but the one I want to show you today involves this plugin, closed captioning via Google Speech Recognition. I'll include the link in the description to this one, but essentially from this page, we can click on the Go to Download option. This will bring up the GitHub repository, and from here we want to select the version that relates to our operating system. So in this case, I'll download the Windows zip file, although I've already done that. So let me just show that to you really quickly. Essentially, there's a single file in this zip file that you need to copy over to your OBS Studio installation. And for me, I had to bring this over to C, Program Files, OBS Studio, OBS Plugins, 64-bit. The drive letter will likely change if you've got a different hard drive that you're working with, but essentially that is where you want to copy this file to. So once you've done that, you can head over to OBS Studio. And now if we go up to the Tools option, we have a new option down here called Cloud Closed Captions, which is a bit of a mouthful. But over here, we can have a look at this one. So we can go into the settings. And again, you can see that it's already working. So if we have the captioning enabled, that will do its thing automatically. We can turn that off at any time. But we want to go into our settings. We want to make sure that you've selected a source, an audio source that will be captioned. So in this case, this applies to my microphone, which I've set up previously. We've got options about when to caption. We've got different language options. There's a profanity filter you can turn on or off. You can actually work with native captions to Twitch, for example. So if that's something that you do, there's also punctuation, I should say, options and capitalization. So you can do all caps, all lowercase, or normal English-like sentence structure. There are different options there as well. So you can actually go in here and set this up to record captions separately for streams and recordings, and while using the virtual camera. There's a whole bunch of options in there. But what we kind of want to do right now, and another thing that's really cool, is you can actually use this, I think it's this one here, as its own caption doc. So you can bring that here. You can move that to a different place if you want to, and sort of position that wherever you like it. So I might see if I can put it, actually that's probably not a bad place for it. So the question I got though was really about actually incorporating these words onto the screen. So we can actually do that, but what we do need to do is create a text source first. So we'll go down to the scene that we want to work with and go to our sources and click the plus or add source option. We're looking for text, GDI for Windows, although it could just be text on other platforms. And I'll give this text source a name. I might just call this one captions. And I've set this up previously, so it's already doing its thing. So that's kind of interesting. I should have turned that off, but let's just roll with it. That's fine. So from here, we can actually go in here and we can change, our font options. If there's a particular font we want to use, I might use Open Sans. Probably want to make it a bit smaller than that. We'll try that, for example, and just see what that looks like. Okay, so this is taking up the entire screen, and it's probably not really what we want to do. So I'm going to actually right click in here. I'm going to go to transform and go to edit transform. And what I want to do is I'm actually going to adjust the bounding box type here. So I think from memory, and I should probably consult my notes while I do this. So we want to do bounding box type to maximum size only. Okay, awesome. So we can do that. We can close that. And now if I resize this, I can sort of decide how large I want this to be and also where I want this to be. And it may be something that you want to think about actually adding in some color in here to separate the background. So let me just go into the settings for a second, and I'm going to go and go into the open captions. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Let's get rid of that text. So I don't know that that's actually, it's not, it's doing it automatically because I'm also recording in OBS, but that's fine. So essentially with the open captions option, we sort of specify our text source. And in this case, it's the one called captions. We can change the line length. We can change the number of lines. We can add that punctuation if we want, and we can change the capitalization. So there we go. I guess the important thing to keep in mind is that none of this is perfect, but it might be a good starting point for a lot of different things. And again, I might even just want to go in here and add a color source. And I will say BG for backgrounds. I can sort of adjust how, maybe tool, how high this is. I might even just go 400. And I'll change the color. And I might just make it... I might make it black, actually. And again, I can bring this down here. Just make sure that's underneath the captions. And I could probably come in here and adjust that size a little bit. I think it's maybe 300. Let's do that. So there we go. We have the ability to come in here and sort of add in our captions. We can make that as large or as small as it needs to be. And we can just work it from there. So admittedly, I don't know that that's necessarily the most elegant solution for this, but it is one way of doing it. And I guess the other thing I'd probably encourage you to think about is if you are having these be burnt onto your video, you might want to think about actually leaving a space for this. So if you do want to go in and edit this, you can have a version that doesn't necessarily take up that whole space. Okay, I want to show you one more thing that can be quite useful for this particular plugin. And that is if you say a particular word and it doesn't translate properly, then we can sort of work around that a little bit and give the plugin some more information. So if I say johnlacey.com, you will see that it's john-lacey.com, where we want these things to all be together. So if I go into the options for our captions, click on the little cog, there's a tab here called text filtering. So I can come in here and actually add a text filtering replacement. So I go down to add text replacement. So I know that when this comes up, it goes john-lacey.com. So that's what I'm looking for. And this is what I want it to look like. So I can change this here and go johnlacey.com. I can save. And now let's try again. johnlacey.com. So it takes a little bit of time to capture all of that information and then present it properly, but it is possible. And if you do find that you have different things like registered trademarks, that kind of thing, additional symbols or common things that are being translated incorrectly, you can certainly go in and adjust those as well. So this is a much less structured tutorial than usual, but if you do want to check out the Learn OBS Studio newsletter over on LinkedIn, I'll include that in the links, but essentially that'll take you through the steps as well. Don't forget to subscribe and like for future content. Okay, so there's an example of a way that you can actually add those captions, whether you're going to just save them as an SRT file and maybe work with them separately after the recording, or maybe do it live. And again, if you do want to check out the Learn OBS newsletter, it is over on LinkedIn. But essentially, you'll see these videos, but you'll also sort of get step-by-step instructions that are written out. And I know sometimes people appreciate that format more. So it's interesting. I know a number of destinations offer some kind of automatic transcription. Sometimes they work really well. Sometimes they don't really work at all. And again, there's always that danger that if you are doing something live with a machine, it may get it wrong. And hopefully that's only a small error and not a massive deal breaker. But certainly that's another option that you can include there. So it's a great plugin. I don't use it all the time, but the times I have had to use it, I found it really, really useful. And again, you will want to go in and tweak those settings to make it look the way that you want it to look. it's not necessarily the thing that's going to give you those kinds of animated captions that you might do in CapCut or that kind of thing. But it is, especially for people that need it, that can't, maybe are deaf, maybe have, aren't able to listen to you in real time. It can be a great fallback for them as well. So that's another one. So that's closed captioning via speech recognition, Google's speech recognition. I haven't included the links to these in the description, but I will go back in after the show and do that. I just didn't want to sort of spoil the surprise. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk about some audio plugins in just a moment. But again, if there are particular OBS Studio plugins that you're using that you really like, or maybe you have a problem that you're trying to solve, or something that you want to do as part of your stream, let me know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you today. And we'll be back and we'll talk about those audio ones in just a second.
And then I looked at the first assessment, and the first assessment was record a 5-minute video. And it was a pretty simple introduction of yourself. There was nothing exciting. I didn't have to research. It was just a 5-minute warm up. And I freaked out. That course is still sitting in the cupboard beside me. I see that stack of papers and I almost rock in the corner. It cost me a lot of money to sign up, and I threw the whole course away.
And that's a segment from my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, the podcast all about showcasing your expertise through content creation. That was Michelle J. Raymond speaking about overcoming her fear of being in front of a camera. And, she was someone who was quite fearful of doing that. These days, she's on LinkedIn Live like once a week. She's got her own YouTube channel. She literally just came back from America, where she spoke at Social Media Marketing World. So I kind of encourage people to see beyond the initial fear and push beyond it and try to get a little bit more comfortable on camera. I know it's not the most natural thing for any of us, and it certainly isn't for me. I have to drag myself kicking and screaming here some weeks, but I do feel better for it, and it's a great opportunity for us to get together and have a chat and work through some of these things together. So you can check it out at johnlacey.com. But today on the video and live streaming show, I'm John Lacey. Normally I'd be joined by my co-host Sam Proof. Unfortunately, he's in a hotel right now. He can't join us because of the internet there. But normally he would be here, and he could be sharing some of his selections as well. So I'm kind of winging it today, but let me know in the chat where you're watching from. Let me know if there are any particular OBS plugins you really like, or problems that you're having with your stream that maybe we can explore together. So let me know about that. But let's talk about some audio, some sound, some audio visual plugins. And this is where I have to cheat a little bit, because the next tutorial I'm going to show you involves 3 separate plugins. So that brings us to 5. But essentially, they've got 3 different things. One is the ASIO plugin for OBS. And ASIO, if my memory it serves me well, I believe is Audio System Input Output. And it's very technical, but the reality is for me, because I use a Rodecaster Pro, the original Rodecaster, not the Pro, not the second one, but the first one, this plugin gives me the ability to bring in my tracks as separate inputs. So I've got different microphones coming in, and I've got my sound pad, and I've got my Bluetooth. I can actually record those separately. I can put them on different scenes and use some and not others. And there's one example in particular that I'll show you in a second where that is really useful. Another one, which I think, I could be wrong, but I think during the week, Saeed mentioned that he really liked was the audio, the scale to sound plugin. So that will actually change your things on your screen based on the audio that's coming in. And then finally, I have an old school sort of wave visualizer. So if you've ever used any of those old kind of EQ visualizers where you play music and something shows up on the screen, I just wanted to show you how I used to use these. And I don't really use them in this way anymore, but for my first live streaming show, which was called Coffee and Content, I used to use these all the time. So let's check it out. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple of audio plugins or audio visual plugins, as the case may be. First of all is the ASIO input capture. So this essentially is just an audio input device similar to the other ones that you'll encounter on OBS Studio. But the great thing about this is if you have an audio device that actually supports ASIO, the audio system input output, I believe is what it stands for, you can actually bring in, and I guess the best way for me to explain this is just to let you know that I have a Rodecaster Pro. It's the original Rodecaster Pro, not the 2. But the great thing about this is I have 4 microphones on here. I can bring in computer audio. I can bring in phone audio. I can bring in Bluetooth audio. And I've also got a sound pad on here as well. So the great thing about this is that I can actually bring these into the software individually rather than just having a studio mix, like a stereo mix for all of that. And the great thing about this is that I can do things like what I've got here on the screen right now is I've actually got the sound pad coming in on my opening sequence. So the great thing about this is when I go live, when I hit my button for the music, my audio, the audio of my mic isn't live. So I'm not accidentally muttering something to the entire audience, which is really, really helpful. And the other thing about this is that I can actually introduce different things, including the waveform visualizer. So this is a great way of actually producing some interest on your screen if you are working with audio predominantly, whether that's music or voice. We can actually choose our audio source, and we can choose whether we're using bars or curves or stepped bars, all these different options. I'll probably leave you to explore those. But again, if I press this button, you'll see how this works. And you can come down and change a whole bunch of the settings here. You actually choose the audio source this is relating to. And again, this is where that ASIO input becomes really useful. I can also come in and actually change the width and the height for this. So you'll see that there's a slightly different version happening on the vertical side of the stream. I can also add some color options. There they are right at the bottom. So again, you can choose the colors that you're using with. Essentially, you've got 2 colors for the gradients. You can also go solid or use the line option there as well. So that's a great way of producing some visual interest on the screen. The other thing you probably would have noticed is that this this thumbnail here, so that was actually moving in relation to the music. And that again is another plugin. And the way that we add this is actually to go to the filters, and we have the scale to sound. So we can come in, if this wasn't already here, we could come here, add it from the list. And again, we're choosing our sound source. So what is it relating to? And again, that's another benefit of actually bringing in that individual audio. We can change a whole bunch of settings, but essentially all it is sort of pulsing in and out to the music. Okay, so I mean, there are sort of 3 audio plugins that work together. You may not need all of them. Depending on your audio setup, you may just want to play with the scale to sound, and also the Wave Visualizer. The Wave Visualizer is amazing. And if you just want to add a little bit of extra interest when maybe you're not on camera, or maybe you're even doing things like promotional videos for your audio podcast, you can bring them in that way as well. So that's really, really cool. I just want to go back to some of the chat comments. I did see one earlier and I wanted to talk about it. Here we go. So Saeed, the facilitator, said, have you tried using the StreamUp plugin? It's a plugin installer and manager for OBS. Yes, I have actually. Like literally just in the last 2 weeks, I've installed that. And it's really interesting. And the one thing I will say is that it's good for checking for updates. The thing that did confuse me a little bit was that It doesn't really install them automatically though. It'll prompt you to go and download them yourself, and then you can install them. And the thing about OBS plugins, some of those will have their own sort of installer application that you run through, and others you will need to actually go and copy files and move them to particular directories. And it's a good idea to read the README documentation for that if you do need to do that. But it is, I mean, so far so good. I mean, last week it told me that the Move plugin had an update, so I went in and downloaded that and installed that as well. It does require a few plugins to work properly from the get-go, but it is completely free. I'm just going to see if I can find the URL for that one, and I'll try and, but it's called StreamUp. I'll just do that in the background while we're talking, because I'm sure I've used it previously. So streamup.tips apparently is the place to go. So I will put a banner up for that one in just a second, and I can see we've got some more comments, so we'll get to those in a moment. But yeah, I mean, so far so good. I haven't used it a lot, but I can see the benefit of it, so it's definitely worth having a look at. And Saeed is saying that it's also potentially limited to certain types of plugins. So I guess that is the thing. I do get the impression that somebody is manually checking the version control there. I don't think it happens automatically, but I could be wrong. But again, it's often a good idea to check that out. And it's some of the advice I give for the Atom TV plugin specifically is that it's actually kind of hard to know or find out which version you're running. So if you haven't updated it in a little while, just go to their website, download it, and reinstall it again, because they're adding new features to it all the time. Like I said, when that first video was recorded, they didn't have the ability to go to multiple vertical destinations in the way that they do now. So there are all kinds of options and all kinds of features. So I am really curious if there are particular plugins that you can't live without. I know Saeed mentioned some earlier. We might revisit that in a second, but I'm really curious to see what you're using, whether you're using anything at all, because I guess at the end of the day, you don't need to use plugins. They can add lovely things to your stream, but you don't need them. You can sort of work from the basic sources that come preloaded. We were sort of talking about this, and again, if you guys are interested, we might do more shows in this way in the future. Yes, okay, there we go. Source clone. So this is one that Saeed loves. I don't think I've played with this one yet. I could be wrong. Let me just I'm playing with my real-time OBS options here, which I probably shouldn't do while I'm in here. So, but yes, certainly the ability to have multiple instances of that same source can be quite useful. But maybe Saeed can explain to us a little bit more about how he uses that one. So again, you know, you can start as simply or as elaborately as you want. Just keep in mind that the more things that you have, like the more elaborate your production becomes, the more resourced your computer is going to need to run that without too many hiccups, but also the more complicated it is for the humans running the show behind the scenes. Okay, cool. So Craig asks, what is the name of the plugin to bring viewers' comments on screen? So that is actually the Social Ninja chat, I think it's called. Let me just look it up in real time. Social Stream Ninja. So if you go to, and I'll throw this up here as well. I don't use it as much as I used to. When I was doing my streams directly out of OBS, I used to use it all the time, but now we sort of defer to StreamYard handling a lot of that, but I would love to use it again. And again, the thing that Saeed tells you constantly is it can use those emote walls to actually bring those in. But essentially, if you go to video.ninja, there's a whole suite of products that Steve has created that you can go in and use with OBS, and I think most of them, if not all of them, are free. It's also a great way of bringing a guest into OBS Studio. So if you're not using a StreamYard or a Restream Studio type of arrangement, you can do that as well. But you can certainly check that out. And again, I don't know, I kind of need a lot of windows open to show this in real time. Although, let's see if I can do this in YouTube, because I'm assuming that's where Saeed is watching. So I'm going to mute this site. I'm going to go to my stream here in the background. I'm going to turn my extension on. Again, it's always a little dicey for me to do this in real time. Once you do that and you install this, and I've got a whole thing on my website, johnlacey.com, if you want to see the way this works. But essentially, let's just see if I can do this, because it might be a little bit too late for me to try and do this right now in real time. In fact, I'll try with the pop-out chat. I'm curious if that'll work for the pop-out chat. So send me a message on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, and I know we are going out to a lot of different places, so you may be watching on a different YouTube channel, but send me something in the chat, and I'll see if I can bring it in this way. Or I can send something here myself. I'll say, okay, thank you very much. So essentially, and again, I haven't checked to see how elegantly formatted this is, but now in theory, if I click this, we can see there's a comment. So this is a test comment from John from Saeed, the facilitator. Again, what the slightly weird thing about this is that it's not an OBS plugin in the traditional sense. What it is a browser plugin. So you actually install this on your browser, and I've got mine in Chrome. And that way I've got this and it's sort of ready to go. And then you add a dock to OBS, and then you add a browser source in OBS as well. And it's funny, I made a video about this a million years ago and I never actually put it out. So it's still there waiting to be edited and published, but I do have sort of some text instructions on my website. Let me just see if I can find those for you. And I will throw those in the chat potentially as well. So essentially, and I guess the other thing to note is there is talk of this changing in the near future for browsers. They've decided they're going to rein in the extensions that you can and cannot use. So the developer of the Social Stream Ninja is working to bring this in a different way. So just keep that in mind. It could change in the near future, but essentially, Saeed does recommend also, if you're doing this, that you do pop out the chat. Once I've got the chat here, I could potentially move that somewhere else or make it bigger or larger, or decide where on the screen I want it. And he's saying too that this works even in Zoom and 30 other tools. And I guess the thing that the article does say, which isn't technically true, is that to get the LinkedIn comments, I thought I had to actually go in and use Restream combined chat. You don't necessarily need to do that, but you do need to have a lot of windows open to make this work across a lot of destinations. So if you've got too many windows open and you're watching and potentially listening to yourself in real time, that can be kind of distracting. So you can kind of make a call about whether you want to do that or not. But essentially, we can bring these comments on the screen. And again, that one's not a great example because it's a URL and it's sort of concatenated that, but that's okay. So the other thing about this, and I've never really done it, and I'm sure Saeed can probably tell me how it actually works, but the emote wall. And I probably shouldn't be trying to add things in real time, but I'm going to give it a go because we've got time to kill. So basically once this is installed, I'm assuming I'm going to my overlay options here. Maybe Saeed can tell me where this is. Okay, so we've got overlay, emotes wall. Okay, cool. So if I copy this, and I'm going to go and make a new browser source. And again, I realize you can't see this, but just listen to me as I'm talking you through it. And I'll just call this emotes. And I will go and add this in here. All right, I don't think that worked. Let me try that again. I pasted it in the wrong place, that's why. Okay, and I might go, I'm just gonna fit this to screen. So now if Saeed maybe puts some emotes into the chat for me, we'll see if this works. I don't even know how. So if I go, there we go. So, and again, you may not know this, and I'll put it on screen as well, but essentially Saeed has just given me all those cats in a row and you saw them animate on my screen. That is really, really cool. And again, because I'm in front of this green screen, I could probably even put that behind me, which would be fun as well. So, you know, I don't know. And Saeed is a facilitator. He's all about the facilitation and the entertainment and bringing those two things together. I don't know how useful that would be long term, but it is a fun thing to sort of experiment and play with. So that is the Social Stream Ninja. You can head over to the video options. I might even just put that back up on the screen over here. So even just video.ninja, we can do that. Head over there. There's some really great tools there. And again, they come with a little bit of a learning curve, but they're so incredibly useful. You should definitely check those out. So, all right. So those are some of the options, and there are so many, and I'd love to talk about some more in the future. If you do like this kind of format of show, let me know. Happy to explore it further. But wherever you do happen to be liking, watching this, you can like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Obviously, Sam may or may not be back next week, but we're going to try and carry on nonetheless. I haven't scheduled next week's show, but I'm hoping to talk about video editing specifically. So if you want to start video editing, if you're a video editor, you have some tips and tricks to share with us, maybe leave a comment somewhere that we can find it, and that would be really, really awesome. Again, because all my assets is kind of set up for two people, I'm not going to do this the way we normally do one on the show, but if you want to learn more about me, you can head over to johnlacey.com. I've got all those, I've got some tutorials over there, including those instructions for the Social Stream Ninja. If you want to catch up with Sam, obviously, if you need some cute kittens in your life, you can head over to cuteavalanche.com or his other website, samproof.tv. So that would be really cool. Okay, that's awesome. All right. So again, thank you so much for your company. It's been really cool, and it's been fun doing this in a different way to the way I normally do it. So it's funny in some ways. Because normally I wouldn't take up the entire screen for starters. So that's a whole new thing, and I have to sort of be a little bit less self-conscious about that. Saeed is mentioning that recording settings would be cool to explore. So that might be a really good thing as well. So anyway, no matter what you're sort of working on, I hope you have a good week. I hope you have a great weekend. Depending on where you are, you might already be in it, like I am here in the future in Australia. But thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and comment and all that good stuff. But I'll talk to you again soon. And I'll go in and I'll add in those links to the OBS plugins once we're done here as well. But certainly you can head over to OBS Project to find those again. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.